All right, bang, welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Joined by an in-studio guest. Can I call you Fish Tank Guy Brian?
Sure.
So Brian works for Tank It Easy is the name of your company.
That's true.
So you are the owner
Yeah.
and operator?
Owner-operator. I have a partner as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of a fish tank company
Yeah.
in Chicago. Very old school dog walk people for people who have been here since the jump. How'd you get into fish tanks, man?
Well, it's wild. I mean, growing up, I always, my dad had fish tanks. So I'd go visit my dad on the weekends, and we'd do water changes together. And for those who don't know, that's not all of the water. It's just a little bit of water you take out to clean it. He always had a fish tank, and it was like the cool thing to do with your dad. Check out the fish tank and see the progress. And so, yeah, we would do that. And then slowly but surely, I was always the guy that had a fish tank in his house or his apartment. I think when I lived in Old Town, I had like 5 different fish tanks when I was working for a marketing company.
Oh, shit.
People would come over and be like, you should work for the shed, man. You should do something different. I was always very passionate about it. And it's something that like brings people together. People usually like very excited to see the fish guy. But I always thought there's no chance that there's like a way to monetize this, right? I thought there's like no way that you could just, do fish tanks without like volunteering. And then I met my partner about 10 years ago, and he was a guy in a bucket, had like a fish tank business, more conservative than we have now. And just kind of learned a little bit more of not just the art of keeping fish tanks, but how do you keep a life support system up and running for in between 2 and 3 weeks in between visits that you're not seeing every single day. And so kind of learn more of the art of that. And then it's, we're kind of like underwater landscapers in a sense, so we're going out to everyone's homes and offices, and everyone's usually pretty stoked to see you because you're usually bringing some kind of livestock for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a passion of mine. And then when I met my partner, I was like, hey, I came up with the name and kind of had some changes and some marketing ploys, if you will. Finding Nemo didn't hurt us.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good name.
Thanks.
Tank It Easy. Tanks. I caught that. Hey, before we really get cooking here, I do want to talk about the best jeans on the planet. And you guys already know that it's MUGSY. Got a promo code for you at the end. But stick with me before we get to that, because MUGSY jeans are the real deal. Listen, there's a lot of chaos going on in the office right now. If they're wearing MUGSY jeans, they could be playing basketball. They could be doing whatever they want because the jeans are so comfortable. They're so versatile, and you look good doing it, okay? They also have more than jeans. They got chinos. They got shorts. They got joggers, and they're the most comfortable of the bunch you'll ever find. I promise you that. They really are the real deal, guys. All jokes aside, they are just the jeans you want to lounge around in if you have to, and go to the bar later. If it's a long day, perfect for a long day of getting after it. Long day of drinking, It's like, hey, we're starting early. We're watching the 11 a.m. game. MUGSY's your guys. They're there for you because they are comfortable, and you won't be sitting there like 7, like, man, I really got to get home. Take off these jeans because they look good, and you get to lounge around in them as well. So, like I said, I do have a promo code for you. Head to MUGSY.com and get 10% off now using code Chicago. That's 10% off some of the most premium jeans, chinos, swimwear, and shorts on the internet. MUGSY also offers free shipping and returns, so there's absolutely no risk giving them a try. If you're in Chicago, Boston, D.C., or Austin, Texas, make sure you head downtown and check out their storefront. Easy vibes every time. Enjoy a beer while you shop. Go get MUGSY. They're seriously the best. Use that promo code Chicago. Helps us out. Thank you, MUGSY. We love you. I love you, listeners, as well. Let's get into the interview. You're right, though, because there's something about walking into a house and seeing a fish tank, and it naturally catches your eye, right? Like, if I saw a snake tank or a bird cage, I'd probably be like, I don't care. I don't want nothing to do with that. If I saw art, I'd be like, I don't understand it. Right. I don't really care about that either. But something about the colors and the even the gnat sounds of a fish tank always kind of makes you gravitate towards it.
Well, the other thing too is like, I think water intrinsically, we're all kind of attracted to it in some respect, whether it's like a pool, that kind of thing, or people spend a lot of money to go on vacation, but it kind of brings that element to your home or office kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this is the feedback I get, but also like the shimmer you get. When you're off of the water. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a big deal that people are like, oh, I love that. And couples are usually, they come to me when it's for their home, they have different ideas of what they want.
Yeah.
But they usually have different things that they appreciate later once it's actually there.
Yeah, no, I could see that for sure. And what I found, so, and we're going to get into it, a lot goes into these tanks.
A lot, but a lot less than you think.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I went to Petco probably 3 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe 4.
Sure.
And I just wanted to buy, my nephew had just turned 4. I just wanted to buy him a basic fish. Like I'm thinking the standard goldfish round bowl, pour a little bit of water in it, put it on the counter and like be done with it, in and out. And this guy, I was like a sucker at the mechanic. He's like, oh no, if you're going to get this, you need this. And like, you need to get this tank, you need to get this coral, and you need to buy water. And when he told me I needed to buy water, I was like, what the fuck do you mean I need to buy water? That's where he really was like, I think he's pulling one over on me, or there's just a lot that goes into this. Is that's true? He wasn't trying to pull one over?
He wasn't, but I think he was trying to set you up for success. And I think the hard thing is with smaller fish tanks, I explain this to my customers a lot, that they come in, they want to dip their toe in the water, no pun intended, but just they want to kind of get into the hobby a little bit. And what they end up doing is getting themselves a really small tank. And when they get a small tank, inevitably, it sounds like I'm trying to sell them something, but I'm trying to say, hey, why don't we skip the small one, go to like a medium size? And the reason is it's a lot like models. I don't know if you ever did models growing up. But
what do you mean by
like
that?
the car model or like the airplane, where there's two types. There's the one that like clips together and has stickers.
Yeah.
And like, ooh, you made something today.
Yeah.
And there's the other one where you got to like do sanding and gluing and all these separate parts and special colored paints and a more difficult scale of different grade of difficulty. In the fish tank world, the smaller the tank, the smaller the body, the smaller the volume of water, the more difficult it actually is to maintain. A couple of reasons for that is because evaporation. In the winter here, it gets really dry. And so water evaporates out of the tank. And so taking a cup out of this or a cup out of a bigger tank, it doesn't impact it quite as quickly.
Uh-huh.
So I think for anyone that's new to the hobby, that's one of the things that they do. They just kind of want to see if they're going to like it before they go all the way in. And they end up doing is getting a small tank that either results in disaster, because there's just little tips. One thing, if it's a tank with a light, a big deal with that is algae growth. So, if you're playing with your nephew and you click on the light, there you go. Mm-hmm. But that's the sun. And if the sun never sets, it grows a lot of algae. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I recommend to people is get a timer. Get some type of timer to knock that out of play so it's only on for 6 or 7 hours. The light is only on for that long. That's one thing. But the second thing is that, what they're getting at with buying the special water. With that, if you've ever seen like a CLR commercial where they have all those dissolved solids on the faucets and things like that, or if you use a humidifier, there's like this dust that gets created and goes on everything in the wintertime. That is these dissolved solids that are in our tap water. So when you use tap water, Petco is going to sell you like a dechlorinator to take away the chlorine, but there's these calcium deposits or these little, maybe I'm getting too sciencey here, but there's a bunch of gunk that's in the water that the fish don't appreciate long term. So that's part of it. So by getting a slightly bigger tank, you can avoid some of these problems. But as far as the water, that's what they're trying to set you up with, what's called reverse osmosis. It's just like distilled water, basically. And that takes out the tap water out of play. And for a small tank, you can get a gallon jug or a couple of gallons and do your water changes that way. Now with a goldfish are kind of a hardier fish. Saltwater is a little more robust. The fish are a little bit hardier, but that's when you get into salt, it gets a little more intimidating per se because of the cost and the barrier of entry with that. Yeah. But the technology nowadays, if you really invest in, getting the right setup from the first part, you're gonna have a great experience. Mm-hmm. Whereas right now, if you go to Petco and you kind of get, that's kind of like the think of like a Bic lighter. Yeah. Like it's disposable. It's not really meant to last very long. Their filters, their pumps, they're kind of lower end, so it's just kind of get you into the hobby. Although it might be expensive, there's other products that we use for our service clients that are a little more high end that can be cleaned, taken apart, put back together, that last longer, but also don't fail as frequently. So it's about redundancy and a couple different ways of doing that. But if you're serious about having like a tank that looks good, there is no filter or magic. It's like a kid. You can't just, you got to do a diaper change. You got to do a water change.
Yeah.
So by doing those water changes, that's what we do. So we do water change and clean the outside and the inside. But that makes a huge impact.
Yeah.
Huge. That you can, if you're willing to do those things, there's no there's no way to avoid getting your hands wet a little bit, maybe twice a month. But I say that it's a lot easier than a dog. I mean, you got to take a dog or a cat. There's a lot more maintenance involved. But with fish tanks, you can optimize that and make it easier. But the small tank that you're kind of set up for your nephew, that is a great experience. But then you probably have to nudge the parents a little bit to kind of get involved a little bit.
Yeah.
And then also feeding is a big part of it.
Yeah.
If you overfeed, it creates a lot of mess. But some of the cleanest tanks I have in Chicago are ones that are in offices where no one's feeding on the weekends. And ironically, they actually do much better.
Really? Just because fish are intermittent fasting or what?
Well, they don't always, have a good hunting day.
Yeah.
They don't always get what they exactly need, but they're swimming around and they do fantastic. Even at the bar, even at different customers' places that we do, we have tanks that aren't fed every single day. Mm-hmm. At least not fully.
Okay, so that goes into a cleaner tank. That's very interesting.
Yeah, what goes in's got to come out.
Yeah, that's a fact.
It is.
That's a fact, Brian. Now, so the Carnival goldfish.
Yes.
Thoughts on that?
Well, I feel like I'm a fish guy priest or something because not a day goes by that someone doesn't stop me on the street and talk to me about the fish that they want at the carnival.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The fish that they talk to me about, the goldfish or the betta, and they're like, hey, I got this fish. It never died. I kept it there, or it did, and I had to switch it out for my kid. Everyone tells me their fish guy story of sorts. But, yeah, the carnival fish, it's like usually those are like the lowest grade of goldfish. Those are like the feeder fish that are in Petco they would sell to feed other animals.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, so there's not I don't know about every carnival, but most of those fish are, but they're hardy. They're basically carp. Type of goldfish. What's
the average life expectancy on those? Do you know?
Well, generally speaking, depending on what kind it is, they grow big. They'll get too big for the small tank. That's for sure. If they're fed well and God willing, they're being maintained properly. I've heard of people having those types of goldfish. They're not looking great on their way out, but they're living for maybe 3 or 4 years,
which is crazy.
Yeah,
to think about. You take this thing home for pulling up a rubber duck and whatever.
There you go.
You got that thing for 3 or 4 years. It's pretty wild. So now, you no schooling, nothing. You basically just have learned all this stuff through hands-on work.
Yeah, hands-on work.
That's pretty crazy, man.
It is wild. Well, I mean, it's a big industry. I mean, it really is.
How so? How can you really?
Well, I would say there's across we're talking billions. I mean, it's a big deal. Even more than that, we have trade shows that come in, like at the Schaumburg Convention Center.
Yeah.
One of the guys that used to work with us, he puts on a trade show. He was like a YouTube guy, Coral Fish 12G, and he's got like 1 million followers on YouTube. And they created this aquarium festival called Aquashella, and it's wild. It is freshwater and saltwater, and it's been around for I think like 18 or 19. And they go to Dallas, they go to Orlando, they go Chicago is another one, and they'll have like 7,000 people show up on a weekend just to see these tanks.
Really?
And that's kind of where Tank It Easy. We kind of partnered with them, and we'll set up I think our record was like 18 saltwater tanks that we would set up for the weekend. Mm-hmm. And it's a big deal. I mean, it's you see the Petcos, and you see I think there's even I don't know if Walmart still does it, but sometimes they have a little fish section. A lot of people, the gateway drug for them is to get started with freshwater, and they enjoy it. Usually they wait for their sales to come up. A lot of do-it-yourselfers.
Joe, if I got a fish tank, what's the biggest difference between me wanting to go freshwater versus saltwater?
Well, I'd say it's like comparing black and white TV to HD.
Really?
Yeah.
It's that big of a difference.
And
saltwater's better, I assume.
Well, saltwater, there's 2 parts. So there's what we call fish only, and then there's reef tanks. And so a reef tank is emulating the Great Barrier Reef. And so You got live coral. And like when I'm talking about coral, you might just, I don't know what you think about when you think coral. But coral it's an animal, first of all, and it comes in like every color of the rainbow. I'm talking like if you took a Crayola crayon box, like the really like fuchsia colored ones, and you broke them and threw them all over the tank, like that's what these animals are.
Yeah.
Like exquisite displays of like rainbow coloring, basically. So that's in a reef tank. Now there's fish only saltwater, which is like your puffer fish and your eels and groupers and maybe even a lionfish type of thing, where they are on the reef, but they're kind of like goats in a sense where they like to nibble and taste the coral. Just out of boredom, or maybe they think it's food or whatnot. Where if you were, in a field of coral underwater in Australia,
yeah,
it wouldn't matter if they took a little snack here or a snack there because it's just so robust. There's coral everywhere. But this type of situation for your home tank or your office tank, that is, if it has coral, you don't want those guys there because it'd be like tying up a goat in your garden.
Yeah.
It would constantly eat everything.
Yeah.
So we keep those separate. But whether you like predator fish, you like that kind of action of those bigger fish, then that's a good spot for you as fish only. But majority of my clients, when they want like the Bentley, like the best fish tank, it's a reef tank. So we have like the cast of Finding Nemo. There's like anemones and clownfish. And
yeah.
all types of
It's
really
very
beautiful.
vibrant.
Very vibrant.
And that's like those are the big time fish tank guys.
Well, I think it can. So what's become the rage now? I know I just kind of dissed the small tanks.
Yeah.
Because they're more difficult, but they have about a nano tank is somewhere between 15 and 30 gallons. Would sit here on the desk.
Okay, so we're talking like a little
cube.
Yeah, cube. Okay.
Yeah, you can set that up, but again, every person that I've met, they start out with that tank, and then they end up getting a bigger tank because no one likes to hear no.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take very long before you have to because you're already full, and you don't have as much motion in there for not as much space. You get a couple clownfish in a tank like this, where if you went to like a 55 gallon or a 75,
yeah,
or albeit like 100 gallon, now you're cooking with gas. Now you can get with the proper lighting above and the filtration beneath. I don't have to tell you no very often. I mean, you can have anemones, you can have cocoa worms, which are like these fancy feather dusters. A lot of like SPS and LPS, large polyps. Like there's a lot of different ways to keep this now because of the lighting. Back in the day, like my dad's tank was like really archaic. The sun would just be on, the light would be on, the metal halide would just be really on and hot, and so you'd have to have like a chiller and all these other components. Whereas now, these LEDs you can adjust them and change them, and it ramps up like the sun. Like if you're on the reef, 12 o'clock, it's the brightest it's going to be, and then the sun sets. These lights emulate all of that. So instead of just getting a piece of coral or a fish or something that you want it to survive for a party, which is how it was done like in the 80s. Now technology has come full circle where you literally are purchasing, instead of like a colony of coral, big pieces, you're getting little chunks, and you can place it and then watch it grow.
Wow.
So
technology has benefited the fish tank industry tremendously.
Tremendously. I mean, I have an app on my phone
that's all it is.
Well, I can monitor. Now they have tank monitoring. So it's like a collection. Like some people might collect, different types of wine or booze or watches or whatever they're into. You want to know that stuff's okay.
Yeah.
It's like the temperature control. But this is more involved, but it simplifies it. So if all of a sudden, let's say your tank is overheating, your apartment's real hot, and you're like, man, this heater is making it, I can turn off my heaters remotely.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty amazing, man.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Like you think about, people just weren't able to do that. You can't sit home all day and tinker and tanker every hour,
Right.
But now with all these, like people talk about I think there's an alarm clock like that, right? Like it just gets really bright and it wakes you up.
Right.
Like this is something that has really benefited a certain industry or certain, wildlife. That's crazy.
It is, because at the end of the day, it's a life support system.
Yeah.
You try to emulate the reef in your home or office, but what's nice for my clients is we monitor that. So we'll get the alerts or understand. There's even it's called, by Neptune Systems, it's called the Apex controller, and it tests the water. And so I get my results for what the fish tank, what the aquarium, how it's doing. So we have this phrase that we use that nothing good in an aquarium happens fast. Anything that happens fast is usually really bad. So we can get ahead of those things. We can see how the phosphates and nitrates and the different calcium and alkalinity levels, how they're doing, and kind of adjust. And so it's kind of interesting because the hobby itself has really lent itself to more of the museum application, like the Shed Aquarium, for example. They're looking at some of this technology to try to innovate and change maybe their tried and true ways of doing things. But now they get to see, oh, wow, technology really is lending a big hand to this, to monitoring their tanks and understanding, oh, we don't have to wait to see this transformation of an ugly phase. We can get out in front of it.
Yeah.
That's where we come in.
Yeah. So do you work with the Shed a lot, or?
We do. We have a cool relationship with them. Sometimes there's different livestock and things like that we can lend. It's cool. We have a really good working relationship with them, and also different, let's say, shed-like companies.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because you always assume, like, oh no, a city corporation, like you hope everything is like not. You hope everything's run the best. I'll just put it that way.
Sure,
so that's good that they're.
I think we're all on the same team at the same respect. Like my teammates, they are just very passionate individuals that really love livestock. So they're making choices based upon what's best for the animals. And so when you have that common thread, you don't really, at least we don't, take the approach of like being very guarded about our information. So just try to be as friendly as possible. We figure if all the fish tanks of people that are or even our competitors, if they're doing well and we can help them, that's going to help our industry as well. And that's worked well for us.
Now, do you ever deal with people who are like, hey, if you have to use all these unnatural ways to make these fish, flourish, maybe they shouldn't be in these tanks? Is that like is there ever blowback on you guys?
There is, but I think it's quickly met by this understanding that clownfish, when they breed, they'll create a clutch of like 5,000 eggs. A lot of them become food for other fish, and the life cycle in the wild is much shorter. So we give them the best protein. We provide food for all of our frozen good mysis, shrimp, and krill, depending on which type of animal it is. But they have incredible lives because they're being well fed all the time, and they get the best water parameters. Now, around the world, we're having problems on the Great Barrier Reef.
That's supposed to be in trouble, huh?
It is, and it kind of plays into this because the temperature is one big catalyst for that, and cyclones come through. You take those two things out, we get to control the temperature and the cyclones, where some of these, I do believe, I'd say in the next 10 years or so, there's a really good chance that when they're looking to repopulate or to grow corals in other areas, they're doing it now with the Coral Restoration Foundation. They're actually taking corals that are more resilient to different temperature changes or repopulating areas that were devastated, where it's just it's just death.
So that's good.
Yeah, so it's fantastic. So to that point, by learning how to monitor and keep those things together, you're actually kind of saving, almost like a seed bank.
Yeah.
So we have a coral farm, actually, where we do this, where we actually grow coral, and it gets, take a big piece and you can actually fragment it into the little pieces. Now, why that's good is that for a hobbyist who's getting into the aquarium business or aquarium hobby, you don't have to spend your whole paycheck. You can buy, instead of buying a piece that's thousands of dollars, you can buy a little piece that's like $40, and then you put it in your tank and let it grow.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's a little less intimidating. The barrier to entry is a lot more reasonable, but then you get to learn about the ocean, livestock appreciation, a lot of good responsibility elements still for children. So it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. I think there would be people that would argue that, like, why don't take the fish out of the ocean or don't take coral. I had an opportunity. I went to Australia a couple of years ago, and I met with the Ministry of Queensland there. It was on a really cool trip. We actually got to go on a diving expedition with on the same boat that they shoot like IMAX videos.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so like there's the back end of the boat had all of our diving gear and whatnot, and they took us to all the honey holes, all the different spots where they have some of the most amazing coral that gets shipped back here. it was a unique opportunity because I got to hand select, go down with my diving gear and,
Oh, wow.
and pick out corals and have them shipped back. And they do it all through licensing and through CITES permits. But the Minister of Queensland was explaining to us that when he took on the position, he wanted to come in and just, nobody's taking anything else out of the reef. Stop it all. And what he found was it'd be like if there was a tornado coming through a cornfield, you knew that was coming. And you could grab a couple ears of corn before that tornado came by. That would actually be, where's the loss? In that respect.
Yeah.
But there's such frequency of cyclones now and such frequency of problems there that they do it. They're very serious about that in Australia. Anything that has to do with nature and keeping things correct. But they allow so many permits and it's very well regulated. And the appreciation for the hobby and everything else, I think it's a great thing when it's well regulated. Now, there's certain areas where that's different. Like in Vietnam, for example, there's a lot of harvesting that's taken place where there's sometimes a scarcity of fish, where that's not from the aquarium hobby, that's for consumption. It's been overfished for the nets and things that they use.
Mm-hmm. That's super interesting. I did not realize you could just go and pick out your own coral.
It's very rare.
It's rare. Okay.
Very rare.
You're you formed a relationship to make this happen.
Correct.
And is it super expensive to do this?
Well, the most expensive thing was getting there.
Really?
And just traveling and whatnot.
Yeah. It's a long flight.
But it was with another YouTube celebrity, Mr. Saltwater Tank. And
okay.
It was funny. That's who I learned from a lot of stuff through YouTube and kind of creating a bond and being kind of a fanboy, if you will, where my passion for the hobby just kind of grew and grew. Got my first set of LED lights back when I was director of sales, had a sales team, and I would just daydream about fish tanks.
Yeah.
And he taught me a bunch, but he does this VIP tour, I guess you could say, for his clients. And that's what it was a part of. And so he has a relationship with a company called Cairns Marine. And Lyle Esquire is a second generation owner of that harvesting group. And now when I say harvesting group, I mean, we're in a 96-foot yacht and we're going out and diving every day. And Lyle, which I think is the most interesting man in the world, he while we're scuba diving down 65 feet, he's going down on a breath of air with a harpoon gun.
Wow.
So we're down there and we're getting our coral and that kind of thing. And here's Lyle kicking down.
Yeah.
Takes his harpoon gun, I think it was a reef trout that he snagged, brings it back up, sushimis it up on the deck. And is here you fellas, here you go, mate. Here you go, here's some fish. Are you kidding me? We got all of our gear on. We're decompressing, doing all that kind of stuff. And he's just it's just second nature to those guys down there. But while we're there to go to harvest coral, there's a boat that shows up. It's a 200-foot, maybe even larger, called the Sharpshooter. And they have storage containers and tanks on their vessel. And so these hunky dudes come out and we went down, paired off with each one of them. They take the collection of coral and put it on fish tanks. In that boat with fish tanks that they then, 2 weeks after I got back, they shipped to me.
Wow.
So it was a unique experience. Not many people get to do that.
No, not at all.
No.
So then if you don't have but still that was only one way of getting it. How did you get the rest of your coral reef? You just kind of order it and there's...
So we have relationships like that,
yeah.
Very similar, where you would pick off of a list and you have the different names and you understand what it is you're looking for.
Yeah.
Australia is a big one and Indonesia is another.
Oh, no shit.
And so those are and there's other places that we get from as well, Red Sea, even off the coast of Florida, there's some stuff. It just... When you look at some of the reef tanks that we put together, it's not you would never dive in the ocean and see everything that's in one of our fish tanks. These are a collection from around the world. Mm-hmm. So it's the best of the best, the most vibrant colors, the most unique shapes, and also hardy stuff that's very good for a startup aquarium. And then we kind of eke our way edge into getting bigger, brighter. Some people are really... budget is no thing. They're I want the most beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
And so we'll get a sample, or get a piece, and I'll have a hot list of different customers that they just always say yes. Mm-hmm. So I hit them up with hey, do you want me to grab this for you? Kind of a bidding type of situation.
What's the scarcity on what's the most popular fish that is pretty scarce? You're hey, that's a tough one. Or everything's kind of attainable.
Well, we usually stay away from a lot of those. We did. We sold a really high end. It's an angelfish. It's called a clarion angel, and that was like a $10,000 fish.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so that one was nerve-wracking to say the least. It wasn't one that I was like, oh, great, let's bring this in. But we have a customer that's just, expects the best, wants the best, and has an amazing basement full of well-kept, beautiful fish. We built all the cabinetry for him, and this is what he wanted. And so we got it, brought it in, and it's doing wonderful. We really try to stay away from very high-end fish, because a lot of times the price is because they don't like to live in aquariums. So in that regard, we stay away from fish that we think aren't going to have great lives here.
Yeah.
If someone's just a collector, Ace Ventura style, like, we're not bringing you in these like wacky specimens that don't like to live in fish tanks. But don't be. I mean, there's plenty of fish.
Yeah. So, all right, get back to that angelfish though.
Yeah.
So what's the process then? Where did you get it from? How do you get it?
So we have
shows up in your doorstep one day.
Oh no! So what we do is we get these. So we have these boxes that come in their cooler boxes.
Yeah.
And so basically, there's a 24-hour shipping cycle.
Yeah.
So let's just say this came from Indonesia. They pack it up, oxygen. They might even fast these fish a little bit the day before, because the first thing the fish does when he's in the bag, I'm scared, gonna lose it. But no, they prep them, they put them in. We get them in, we receive them, and we have at our facility, we're the only company that I know of in the Midwest that does this, but we have a quarantine hallway, and it's kind of like Shark Tank. Like, you walk down this big hallway and there's fish tanks on each side. And so what we like to do is make sure that the fish are in, observe them, and make sure that they're fat and happy before they go out. So they've already had a rough trip. They've already put in a bag and shipped, and that happens constantly. But to observe them and make sure that they have, like when we travel, sometimes, pre-COVID, we'd be worried about, you might catch a cold or be sick just from the stress of traveling.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. Let them settle down and make sure they've got really good food. Observe, might need to medicate if they have any type of parasite or something they have from the wild. We do that twofold. One, for the fish to make sure that it's fat and happy and good to go. But the second reason is because we're bringing those to either the retail sales floor for customers that are coming in, but also, for a selfish reason, our service clients. All those already have perfectly healthy fish that are already there. And so if you brought somebody in who was sick and they got everybody else sick, that would be devastating from a showroom quality tank in a place where it's in the public. We have to make sure that the fish is perfectly acclimated and has the best chance for success.
So what happens if it doesn't? Is there a return policy? Say that guy who got the $10,000 angelfish and that fish dies 3 days after he gets it. How does that work?
That is on him.
Really?
Yeah. Well, we didn't even. That's part of the deal. Like, we don't normally do that type of special order.
Yeah.
But for someone that is a boss, someone who wants that, this is your gamble. So we're bringing it in, But in the flip side, on our other fish, if we lose, we lose. Like, that's part of it. It's usually around 5% loss, the way that we do it. So.
And that's like you're saying, the ones that come over and they have a cold or something, and it's like, and so you would. If it dies in front of you, then obviously you take the loss. But if it gets out from under you guys, is that on them, every fish? If it dies?
Not our service clients.
Okay.
We have a pretty unique deal where we try to set up for the CEOs of the world. If they're running a business, they want to have stability to what's their cost, how much it's going to cost. And we try to set up an all-inclusive package where we've kind of taken the aquarium hobby and flipped it upside down. I know it's not that impressive, but it's true. So like a normal fish store, like a Petco or a different fish store, they sell you a fish, it dies. Like, oh, that's too bad. Let me sell you another one. Oh, that died. They're not really vested in making sure that your aquarium is top notch and everything's put together well, because they keep getting rewarded for more sales. The way we like to do it with our service clients is there's a number, this is how much it is, great. And we're coming out and servicing every 2 weeks, sometimes even more than that, sometimes weekly. We believe if we're doing that, we're the experts. This should work great. If there is a fish death in that regard, because we have that relationship, we replace it. We eat that cost.
Oh, that's nice then.
Yeah, so that's how we feel like it's a win-win. The fish we have a vested interest in them doing well.
Yeah.
And then from the customer's perspective, they're like, wait a second, I'm not as emotional or upset about the loss
Yeah.
anymore because we know you're replacing.
Yeah, it's a long-term plan to succeed here.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then you guys will take it. That's very nice. But in special circumstances, when someone's paying $10,000 for an angelfish, it's like, hey, this is rare. This, just so you know, everything's pretty upfront. Like, it's on you if it happens.
And it's something that isn't done very often.
Yeah.
So when it's something of that high level, you know, you have to kind of hedge your bet a little bit and have that, you know, if you want, we're going to do everything possible to make sure that this guy is doing well. And up front, we're probably advising, hey, there's other angelfish that are arguably equally as beautiful.
Yeah.
However, this Clarion angelfish is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I got to look at an angelfish after this. Now, how many of your client base are these big swinging dick kind of CEOs and the?
I would say a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Well, let's put it this way. A lot of the businesses that we put tanks in, these are bosses. These are people that own high-end artwork. I had one client tell me who owns a Monet or two that this is exquisite.
Casual.
Well, they were casual about it, but I mean, like,
no, I know.
to stop me and be like, you know, this is exquisite art because it's moving, it's got motion, that kind of thing. And I was like humbled by like, whoa, like that's cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a big thing. And you said, so how would you, if you had to put percentages on it, what is like a home, an office, a business? What's the breakdown of like what you guys are installing right now? What you're seeing in 2023?
2023, we're doing about, I'd say 60% is businesses.
Okay.
Yeah, and then 40% are homes.
So it'll be like a restaurant or something like that.
Yeah, most definitely.
40% homes then.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
40% homes. But then it fluctuates because we have customers that have a fish tank in their office, a fish tank in their lobby, and the fish tank at their home.
So they got all bases covered.
All bases covered, and that's where they get to kind of, you know, they're people that don't want to choose. They don't want to choose between a reef tank and a fish only or a freshwater. They're so in love with it, they want a little bit of everything. I'm sure they dreamed about it when they were younger. We have a lot of clients that as their careers progress, they hit us up with, oh, we're moving, I want to do something bigger. And that's
What's the Taj Mahal of fish tanks that you've made?
Let's see here. We've got a really cool one out in Elmhurst that's it's like a 700-gallon cylinder tank.
Okay.
And so what's cool about that is it's, you know, like you would think it's cylinder, but it gives the opportunity for the fish to swim in the circle. So they always are kind of moving and they chase each other. And in the inside, there's a pretty cool example of like the rock structure, and they can kind of swim in and out.
Oh, nice.
I have a 1,300-gallon in Glenview. We've got a really cool tank in River North at a plastic surgeon's office where you'll be getting like a consult, and it's like a wall.
Oh, wow.
And then on the other side, there's another consult office where they're looking up the other way.
Oh, sweet.
And it gets really wild. It's fun to work with some of these designers because they'll dream up something wild. A lot of times they don't realize that you need a lot of depth. But that's where we come in to kind of hold their hand
Let
and
them
kind of like, this is a cool concept. Let me show you how it's possible.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And you just work from there.
Yeah. And we also do tank takeovers. So that would be something like, let's say, you've all seen, I'm assuming you've seen like that TV show Tanked.
I don't know if I have, but I
So it's like Animal Planet.
Yeah.
It was big. It's off the air now, but it inspired a lot of people. But we've had a couple takeovers where a competitor or someone like them built, you know, a really big tank for the show. And that's one thing. That's really cool. But I think the finesse and what we bring for that is to actually create it in such a way that it needs to be serviced for it to look great. You know, sometimes for the Hollywood stuff, they built a cool tank and then they go bye-bye.
Yeah. It's kind of like the show Pimp My Ride, huh?
Correct.
Yes, where the exhibit was pimping, you know, he's putting fish tanks in the headrests, but then, you know.
Who's taking care of that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a big part of it is like
Yeah.
it has to be maintained well, but it's not. It just takes regular maintenance. Just a little bit of TLC goes a long way. I think a lot of times people kind of cover their eyes. They're like, oh, I got this great thing. And they do like the Tim the Toolman Taylor, like, oh, I've got this big fish tank. And they want to ignore the other things. And maybe they're like, I'm going to buy a better filter. Or like, I'm going to buy, you know, for your home, you'd be like, I'm going to buy a better air conditioner, or a bigger one. I'm going to oversize everything. But in reality, you got to get in there and you got to touch everything and maintain it for it to be showroom quality, and not be like what I call like a science experiment. We walk onto the scene sometimes where people kind of did it themselves and they got it as far as they possibly could. But the reason I refer to us as like underwater landscapers is just that. The landscaping guys, there's people that like to do their own lawn and they like to mow their own lawn, and that's their thing. We have a lot of those types of people.
Yeah.
And there's other people that want to drink a beer and sit back and enjoy their lawn.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're really popular with those kind of guys.
Yeah.
Where they just want to sit. It's corny, but this is what we said. We do all the work so you can tank it easy.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What about sharks?
I get that one a lot.
I bet. I figured.
Oh my gosh. I've put together some pretty big quotes for some really eccentric customers. And I mean, it's staggering how much more. A couple of things you need to know about sharks. So the same way this desk here is arced, and this room is a box. For sharks, they don't want a box. They want a raceway so that their nose doesn't get stuck in the corner.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a thing. The other thing that's not popular is that sharks are pretty boring. They're not. It's not like Jaws. It's not like these guys are like cool or like let's just feed them and whatever. They're beautiful. They're also a little bit nocturnal. Some of them, they like to move around at night. And then you're also kind of limited. Their skin doesn't allow them the same type of medication you would for some fish. So if you really want that ball or big tank, the same size of this room, cool, awesome. A lot more expense to make it curved and a lot more expense to do another quarantine tank. Because the same way I've got a quarantine hallway, you got to have an equally sized, not equally, but a decent sized tank to observe. And because once you've gone through the process of getting it here, getting it in the tank, it's happy, it's healthy, you're also kind of like in a really sketchy area in the sense of you got to have enough water to do a big water change if there is a problem.
Yeah.
Everything gets much more complex. So, and we're talking big numbers. I think I did like a quote for I think it was like a 10,000 gallon aquarium. And I want to say it was like close to $750,000. And this is like 8 years ago.
Wow.
And so it really separates the men from the boys. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
If you're like,
did they pull the trigger on it?
No. I got big timed. It was like, yeah, we'll do it. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I need it here next month. And I was like, sir, this is like building a house. Like, there's no like, I don't care how much money you have.
Yeah.
And we're competing, not really competing, but they're the same, getting stuff from 3M, getting the acrylic and getting our folks at Titan. This is one of our big acrylic manufacturers, and they build for all the different zoos. You're trying to get in front of people in Dubai. We're talking about Dubai money. You're not going to throw some extra dollars and be able to get in front of anyone else. These are all big time players in the game. So when you get to that realm, it's kind of like the most important thing is securing what they want, the shape, and then securing material. It's similar to building a house because you have to what it costs today may not be what it costs 6 months from now. Mm-hmm. And so holding hands through that, to answer your question, that's the biggest, sharks, everyone talks about sharks, but when they get down to the nuts and bolts, what do you want in the tank? As soon as you can understand that sharks are awesome, but you should go to the shed for some of that kind of stuff. If it's, based on space, especially in Chicago, who's going to dedicate that much space towards it? And then another, you almost need a whole separate facility to really have a shark exhibit.
Yeah. Wow. That's fascinating. It needs to be cylinder and that much goes into it, and that's how much it would be if you wanted sharks.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cool sharks that aren't also allowed to be transported that would maybe work well.
Yeah.
But now you're really getting into illegal stuff.
How often are you presented with illegal activity?
Ironically, I will get emails, things like that, for some people to try to get stuff shipped to us from outside the country that aren't, so we have our staples. We have our tried and true places that we go to for that. But yeah, not as often as you think. And I think of the legalization of weed, I think that's pretty much the only other, I think a lot of customers do partake.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. How often is it hey, I got this. Don't ask how I got it, but I have it. I need your help.
We haven't gotten that.
Yeah.
I think we've had guys talk a big game about that.
Yeah.
But the logistics of actually bringing something like that in is near impossible.
It's hard, huh?
I mean, we're talking prison. You want to bring something through customs that's not supposed to go through?
Yeah, you'll get fucked.
Oh, yeah. No tanks.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. But you hear about, like, I found these snapping turtles in the basement of this business, and here, you know what I mean? In this part of town, you'll hear that whole thing. And that's fascinating. And then what about, while we're on sharks, actually?
Yeah.
I mean, you seem like you know a lot about kind of everything that's going on in the, you know, the oceans and everything like that. This, I watched that Seaspiracy doc. I don't know if you saw that one, but they talk about shark fin soup. And how it's like mutilating the shark population.
It's absurd. It's heartbreaking. It really is, because I don't care who you are. I mean, I watched some of those videos, and it's terrible. It's terrible in that respect. The netting that goes on, the way that they're just capturing all these different types of fish, it's really hard to regulate these types of things. It's just a bunch of knuckleheads, to be honest, because they're really depleting the ocean in a major way that doesn't need to happen at all. It's just like everything else. It's politics. It really is. I mean, the way that people harvest, you know, you could be smart about it, you know, even just from tuna consumption. I mean, there's a big part of the industry, that capitalism, that'll just devour big parts of the ocean, which is short-sighted. It really is. I think it takes more people to be talking about it and actually get more involvement, but like, we could do a great job here in the U.S. and have good regulations, whatnot. But then how does that translate to other governments that are just turning a blind eye and grabbing it? And I think it starts with also, you know, getting other countries to stop purchasing, you know, supply and demand. If they could stop that, that would greatly impact. But yeah, I don't know about the shark. The shark fin stuff is just, it's brutal. It's similar to, like, you know, ivory.
Yeah.
Ivory with elephants. Like, you're just not even using the animal. You're just taking it for those desirable tusks. Yeah,
for people that aren't familiar, to my knowledge, what I saw in that doc at least is that there are parts in Asia where they're overfishing sharks, and they're just cutting off the fin and they're putting in this soup. And this soup is like super bland. It's not even like a tasteful thing where people really enjoy it, but it's a status thing.
Yeah.
It's like a high class, like you look elite and people want to, you know, get some social media clout or something like that on that.
Some type of health benefit or that kind of thing.
Is there that too?
Alleged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't really know. Yeah.
No.
But yeah, it's like a big thing, because sharks are kind of.
Yeah, and between that and also the different stigmas that sharks have. You know, I saw a video the other day of like a whale shark being, you know, mutilated, that kind of thing. These are beautiful creatures that aren't. It's not like the movie Jaws. Like, I've seen them in the ocean. Yeah, they're majestic. I would be lying if I wasn't a little like just pre-programmed to be nervous. But they're majestic creatures. They're really, really cool, and they're apex predators. It's a big part of the ocean, and you eliminate that, a lot of other things can go awry. But yeah, it needs more coverage. But again, the ocean is huge. So you were talking about, you know, chasing down individual boats and trying to regulate those types of things. At the end of the day, it's poor management, you know, poor ethics, I would say, and short-sightedness in general, because, you know, it's not going to be around for much longer at this rate if people keep attacking it this way.
It does. You said the reef, they're finding ways to, you know, get past the temperature restrictions that they're finding. Is it looking more positive now, or I don't know how much you follow?
I followed a lot. Yeah. I do, and I think there's some misconception. Like chasing corals was another one. It's a good documentary. It's kind of depressing, but at the same token, it really kind of gives you an idea of the bleaching, and that's what it's called. There's coral that when the flesh dies on the outside, it shows the skeleton. The coral has skeleton just like you and I, where it's like the bone structure behind it. And they actually consume calcium and alkalinity, and they produce, and that's how they grow. And yeah, when it starts going south, temperature-wise, or there's different pollutants that can affect this as well. It's a downward spiral that affects, it's called bleaching, where all the vibrant colors then just turn white, and they get kind of funky with different algae, and then it just becomes like a graveyard where there's just fish. But then they all have symbiotic relationships. So they need each other really bad. So as far as what the Coral Restoration Project does, I think I explained a little bit earlier about fragging, where they take a colony and they cut it up into smaller sections. You can plant, essentially, where you super glue them to rocks, essentially. And to get an idea of like speed of growth, it's like your fingernail. At the speed that your fingernail grows, some of these corals, not all of them, but this is just how I explain it, they will repropagate. So the Coral Restoration Foundation, they will actually go down and create these like almost like Christmas tree things out of like PVC or rocks or different things that they will plant all this different coral. And they'll plant in all these different areas to repopulate devastated areas. And it's like the rainforest. I mean, it's something that's very crucial to our planet. It's funny, I'm talking about this, but I'm very passionate about the fact that like it's a big deal. I think that's a big part of like why we do these different types of things, like with the explaining and teaching about coral even to the new generation. Like I love when a kid is interested in the fish tank and how that all works, because it's kind of like passing the baton. The more they understand it, the more they will value it. I know it's kind of like an uphill battle of sorts, but that's how I got into it. That's how I appreciate it. And I think it's crucial to this. We got so much access to information and technology.
Yeah.
So Coral Restoration Foundation is a big advocate for repopulating the reefs.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be. It would be obviously a big shame if it were to go extinct.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And what was interesting too, we were talking earlier, you have turned this business into another business where you have a bar now.
Correct.
Which is unbelievable.
It is. It really is. So, it's called Lost Reef Lounge, and it's right down the street. It's at Belmont and Sheffield. And what it is, it's a cocktail lounge that we have 8 different fish tanks. We've got 4 fish only with like predator fish, and then 4 reef tanks that have the live coral, and pretty much the cast of Finding Nemo is in all these different tanks. And so it's, it was an opportunity to showcase what we do, because a lot of our fish tanks are, if you work at a cool office, then you get to see their awesome fish tank. Or some of our home tanks, if you're at a dinner party, you'd see some of these fish tanks. But a little bit of a social experiment in the sense that we don't have TVs. It's like, it's very old school, like cocktail lounge. We have a bunch of signature drinks that we do there. But it's a really cool date spot, really, because all the fish tanks are at like 46 inches tall off the ground. So if someone's standing and looking at the tank, their torso isn't blocking the fish. And so you can kind of see what's going on. There really isn't a bad seat in the place, because you're just wherever you're at, you're surrounded by these fish tanks. And we have like cool lighting, and we've been open since February.
I got to come check it out.
Yeah, I hope you do.
That sounds pretty sweet, man.
Yeah.
Like that's a bar with fish tanks instead of TVs in the heart of Wrigleyville.
Exactly. Yeah, it is wild.
Very wild.
Yeah, but it's proven. I mean, like you see people walk in who either have a lot of knowledge or no knowledge of fish tanks, and their eyeballs are just super wide.
Yeah.
To kind of just see everything. And we've got a Mappa puffer that's the size of like a football in one of our corner tanks. We've got zebra eels and snowflake eels, a lot of different coral. Actually, one of the corals that we became a little well known in the industry for, I think you've heard of like an anemone.
Yeah.
The clownfish swims in the anemone for protection. It's called, so we didn't name it this, but it's like a really awesome like fuchsia colors. It's called the Chicago sunburst anemone. So there's no natural reefs around here, but we've propagated these. And so anemones, they split and divide, and they're just very sought after. There's another one called the Colorado sunburst for some reason. They're very similar, but one of our best-selling cocktails is the Chicago sunburst, named after this anemone. We became popular for.
That's cool. Do you have a drink with the gummy shark?
We don't.
All right, look into that one.
I will.
People like those.
We'll get you some gummy sharks.
Yeah, right. Or you got to have Swedish fish on deck. That's another one. You got to have Swedish.
This sounds
fish
like our first creation meeting. We were talking about goldfish, Swedish fish. They kind of went a high-end direction where that didn't exactly pan out that way. But there is like a mezcal cured salmon and some really, it's all delicious stuff.
So the restaurant too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Very much so.
Wow. All right then, Brian. We could wrap it up here. I guess maybe before we wrap it up though, if someone did want to kind of get into an entry level thing, what do you typically recommend? Like what kind of tank? What kind of fish? What Well, of course, obviously call Tank It Easy if you want to go that route too. But
absolutely. So, our 8,000 square foot showroom is at 4642 West Lawrence. But there we have a lot of examples of really good hardy fish. The godsend is that the clownfish is actually a very hardy saltwater fish.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's a crowd pleaser. So you bring in some clownfish, bring in some Nemos to start out the tank, and everyone's really, really happy. But moving on from there, dory, the blue tang, I would kind of wait on that until you have about I'd say 100, 150 gallon tank. Where I think a lot of people mistake that and they go right in real fast and like they want the cast. Clownfish are great. There's different tangs that are really cool, like sailfin tangs. Those need the nori, like you have on your sushi. You have to put a clip in there, and they kind of eat at that. And they also have Nicest shrimp as well. But yeah, Bangai cardinals, those are really cool. They're like zebra shaped. They're zebra colored, so they have like deviations through the eye. They look really cool. They're mouth breeders, so if they do breed in your tank, one day you look at one and it has like their mouth is kind of like a dump truck.
Oh wow!
And like the dad will open the mouth, and you'll just see like hundreds of little eyes looking at you out of the mouth.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's pretty crazy.
That's a fun thing for the family. But yeah, I think I would say before you get into it, really understand. Go shop around, take a look. Go to the bar, check out the different fish tanks, because you really kind of want to know what your target is. Because you can tell me one fish you really want, and I can design a fish tank around it. Or kind of guide you in which one makes more sense for you. Because if you said shark, I'd have the shark talk with you. But if you were like, I really want to have an eel, cool. Well, that's something that would probably be a fish only. We talk more about cool puffer fish, and they have a whole variety of a whole cast in themselves for that. Or if you're baller status, you're doing a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And then it's easier to tell you know it all.
Wow. Fascinating stuff. I really enjoyed this, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
One more time, what's the website, number, address?
So it's Tank It Easy is for everything aquariums. You can check us out there. Our Instagram is Tank It Easy. If you want to see me doing a bunch of real silly stuff, you go to Tank It Easy TV on YouTube.
Perfect.
And you'll see me doing a bunch of wacky stuff. But then, Lost Reef on Belmont and Sheffield.
Yeah.
Lost Reef Chicago is the Instagram.
Okay.
And you'll see little examples of that. But that's a great date spot. We also do like company parties, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Well, glad Carl ran into you. That was,
Thanks, Carl.
There we go. Because this was a fun pod. Thanks again, Brian. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.